Welcome to your classroom coffee break. I'm John Van Dusen, longtime teacher, coach, and Army officer. And in this episode, we're talking about should you teach older grades or younger grades? I think this is a fantastic question because this is a decision you usually have to make before you declare your major or minor or where you're going. So you're very early in your college career when you have to make the decision if you're going to teach elementary students or if you're going to teach high school students. So understanding the pros and cons and where you fit best into that system is super important. So first, let's talk about the pros and cons of each. So when we're teaching younger grades, some of the pros are focusing on foundational skills like reading, writing, and basic math. And this brings me back to my senior year of high school when I had an independent study, which means I would go into the first grade classroom and I would just help with whatever they needed. And I remember being blown away by the amount of growth those students had. When I first started helping them, some of them didn't even know their name, didn't know their colors or letters. And then by the end of 6 weeks, those students were reading, those students were writing. It was just an incredible amount of growth. And that really solidified that I wanted to teach younger grades in that one experience. On the flip side of that, a challenge of teaching younger grades is you're going to end up with a lot of really high energy. And as much as I love teaching those elementary kids, when I was a STEM teacher teaching pre-kindergarten through 5th grade, partially because of how I run my classroom, but also partially because all of the kids were super excited to come to STEM class, it was incredibly draining on me energy wise because all of those students were so excited to come and I felt like I had to be on par with their energy. So at the end of the day, I would come home and I would literally just lay down on the floor with no music, no light, nothing. I was just overstimulated and I needed to have a stimulation detox just for a few minutes because there was such high energy. But with that high energy comes great growth. So those are some pros and cons of teaching the younger grades. So talking about pros of teaching high school, some of the older grades, is you definitely get a deeper content focus and you can have a lot more critical thinking and complex discussion type situations where your students are moving beyond knowledge and really into that analytical and synthesizing of information and applying it to new situations. So that can be extremely rewarding as well. Another advantage with teaching older kids is they're a lot more independent. With younger students, you cannot just have a day where they have to sit at their desk and work on a project by themselves. That does not work. But with high school kids, even with middle school students, there are times that they can work a lot more independent or as a small group, whether we're doing a project or studying for a test. The older students can do a lot more on their own. Now, some challenges is you're definitely going to be dealing with a lot more attitudes. With the younger kids, you'll be dealing with some behavior issues, but at the middle school and high school level, now you're dealing with attitudes and you're dealing with young men and women who are testing the limits of where they think is okay. And you're also going to have different types of behavior issues. So as you move into the middle school and high school, you're going to have students who are going to push the limits on, say, their phone usage. You're going to have students that are going to get caught with illegal substances like vapes. And you're going to have students that are so independent that they might choose to skip school or just not show up to your class. Now, the flip side of that one is as you teach the older grades, you're also going to have students that are so involved in things that they may put your class on the back burner because they might be in sports, student council, they might be in Futures Club, they're filling out scholarship applications, they have 3 jobs. So there's definitely more adult-sized challenges when dealing with high school kids, but it can also be a lot of fun. I remember when I moved from teaching the STEM class in the elementary room to the middle school, when I told all my elementary teacher friends that I was going to the middle school, I had the same reaction. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe you're going to go teach middle school. I could never do that. And the interesting part is when I got to the middle school and I was talking to my middle school teacher friends, they said, oh my gosh, I cannot believe you taught elementary. I could never do that. And I just bring that up for 2 points. Is one, both environments are very unique in what they offer in the pros and the cons, but also you can do it. Just because you don't necessarily enjoy teaching the younger grades doesn't mean you can't do it. Just because you don't enjoy the challenges that come with teaching older grades doesn't mean you can't do it. So all of my teacher friends that told me, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that. Yeah, you could. So some other things to consider is your personality and teaching style. If you are someone who likes really deep discussion and exploring complex ideas and doing things other than just the education part, whether that's leading teams, like I mentioned before, with student council or futures club or anything like that, then you may want to look into teaching the older grades. However, if you're someone who is more patient, more of a nurturing type of person, then the younger grades are probably what you're looking for. Another factor to consider would be your subject preference. So if you like teaching a wide variety of topics, if you like reading and history and math and all of those different things, you're going to find that type of teaching down in the elementary classroom, where you're going to have your students a lot more than just for, say, a 50-minute block like in the middle school or high school. But if you're someone who likes to deep dive into a specific topic like history or math, and you're okay doing that all day, every day, then the older grades are definitely going to be your jam. So I mentioned it a little bit before, but the behavior management is going to be another issue. If you're somebody who's okay tying shoes and wiping noses and dealing with those, I'll call them little kid behaviors, then you're going to want to look towards getting certified in elementary. But if you're someone who really likes to build those relationships and help students understand that vaping is not a good way to go, you have to be in school, it's important to work hard and do your best, then you may want to be looking into the high school environment. And then I know it's hard now, but I would ask that you really look forward and see what are your career goals. Do you eventually want to move into being a principal or a superintendent? Would you rather be on the administration side of the house, or do you just want to strictly work with students? And also remember that the intermediate school district has different type of specialty programs that work with a bunch of different schools. So if you're someone who really likes to work with a variety of different people and students and age groups, maybe look into your local ISD specialties instead of a traditional classroom. And that career goal is something that can definitely change. When I had my first classroom, it was an 8th grade classroom, and I was about 9 days out from kicking in doors in Iraq. And I saw how the administration was working, and I thought to myself, I have to be in charge of this. I already see things that I can fix as an administrator. I went so far as to start my master's degree in administration. But the further I went down that road, I realized that the reason I got into education is because I really enjoyed working with students. So I abandoned that career goal and I focused strictly on teaching kids. So how do you decide? How do you decide, when you haven't really even been in a classroom, if you should take the path that leads you to the elementary side of the house, or if you should take the path that leads you to the high school? Well, here's a few different things that you can do to help make that decision. First, in all of your teacher programs, you're going to have an opportunity to go into different classrooms. And I'm going to challenge you to get outside of your college district. For instance, at Northern Michigan University, almost all of our placements, all of our real world experience was inside the Marquette area school system. Well, those students are used to seeing college kids all the time, which in some ways is great, but in other ways, you're not getting a true sense of what being in a different type of classroom is. So even if you have to drive 30, 40 miles to get into a different environment, I would highly, highly recommend that you go check out different districts and try to get into a district that is very well off financially. Try to get into a district that is generally considered poor. Try to get into a private school. Go into a Catholic school. Go experience all of these different environments and understand that each one is going to be different based on the culture of the school, the administration, what the school board emphasizes. And just because you enjoy one classroom in one district doesn't mean that you would enjoy that same scenario somewhere else. It also means that just because you didn't like something and it could be how the teacher ran the room, it could be how the administration dealt with behavior issues, does not mean that that grade is not for you. I just ask that you get a wide variety of different experiences before you go to make that choice. And the last thing that you really need to consider, and I think this might be the most important, is researching the certification requirements for your state. And what I mean by that is in Michigan, you can get certified kindergarten through sixth grade contained classroom, which means you're going to have your students over 50% of the time. Now you're going to be teaching reading, you're going to be teaching English, math, history, or you can get certified for 6 through 12 in a certain subject area. But in Michigan, they changed the law about the time I was going through teacher school, where you are only allowed to teach in your major or your minor. So that messed up a lot of people going through college who are already in, and now they can only teach English. They can only teach history. For example, I have a major in elementary education, so that sets me up. I can teach in that contained classroom. And then I actually triple minored. I have a minor in math, I have a minor in social studies, and a minor in military science. So I can teach 6 through 8 math or social studies. And also be really careful when you choose those majors and minors, because if you are a social studies minor, you can teach more things than if you are simply a history minor. So back to the original question, should you teach younger grades or should you teach older grades? And the answer is, it depends. It really depends on your personality. It depends on what you enjoy doing, and depends on your career goals and what your passion is and why you're actually getting into education. If you have any more tips or tricks or questions about this topic, please leave them in the comments section. And I will end with this. Don't worry, you are going to be just fine. And if you end up teaching grades that you don't enjoy, you can always switch. But I want to thank you for joining me for your classroom coffee break.